Deirdre, to get us started, give me two truths and a lie, please.
All right. Let's see if you can guess this one. Item number one, I was born a citizen of three countries.
Yeah.
Day one, coming out of the womb, three countries, passports. Number two, I believe money is the root of all evil. And number three, I work to help financial advisors and their clients align their money and their values.
Ah, I like it. See, I was taught years ago, Deirdre, that when you're taking a multiple choice test, you should try to eliminate the obvious correct or incorrect
Uh-huh.
answers right away. So I'm going to knock off the last one because I know that that's true. As to whether or not you actually were born with citizenship in three countries, and you think that money is the root of all evil. Oh my goodness. I'm going to say that the lie is that you do not believe that money is the root of all evil.
You are correct. My
Yes.
views are far more nuanced.
It's not that simple,
It's not
Deirdre?
that simple. It's not that simple. It is interesting. I actually heard a really great metaphor recently on this topic. It was, we're talking about um, profits and business and values and all of that stuff. And the metaphor was that profits in a business are like blood pumping through your body. Like you need them, but they're not the purpose. If you wake up in the morning and say, "My purpose today is for my heart to pump my blood through my body," you are missing the point. But if your heart is not pumping your blood through your body, nothing else is going on either. So, it's necessary. But then what you do with that is what really matters.
Amen. I think that that is 100% right. All right. So which three countries are you citizens of? Are you a
Ah,
citizen
so
of?
my dad was American. My mom grew up in Finland,
Mm.
and they went over to Ireland to have me. So I realize now that I am a mom, I look back and I go, oh, my parents were crazy. Like, why would you do that? My first child, and I'm not the first child, but my first child, I was so obsessive about who my OB was going to be and which hospital I was going to deliver at and all these things. And like, I'm like, you just showed up in another country and just took who they gave you? Really?
You
That's
people are
crazy.
crazy. How
But
wildly
they did.
irresponsible of you.
Yes. And I didn't put all these pieces together again until later as an older person. Then my dad left my mom. And so, by the way, my parents did with us, all of us. There are five. They did this five times. And my dad would go off to the embassy, which was in Dublin. And we were not born in Dublin. And my mom would be home with one, two, three, four, or five children, of whom one was brand new, until he came back with a passport from the embassy and a birth certificate. So crazy. Yeah, yeah, but very special, very, very cool and unique family to grow up in.
No, no kidding. That is wild. So they did that whole transaction. They did that five times?
Yes. By the time they had baby number five, I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but here we are. My mom just brought baby pictures from all the rest of us and picked the one that looked, because also remember, this is before digital cameras. You had to take your child to a pharmacy with a photo booth and all that and get enough photos until one of them fit all of the requirements of a passport photo. The ears showing and the this size head, all that. So she just brought everybody else's pictures and sent the one that looked most like the baby on hand.
How funny. And I can speak to just from personal experience going to a Walgreens within the last 6 months to get passport pictures of my three kids, and that was an impossibility. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I have also done that in the last year. It's not easy at all.
how funny. So,
Oh,
okay, well, there's so many questions that are there. Maybe that'll be for episode number two.
perhaps.
So, money is not the root of all evil. Is the love of money the root of all evil? Or am I still being too
I,
simple?
I do believe the Bible says that, and as a Christian, I do take the Bible as truth. So yeah, there's probably what's so funny is for somebody who spends literally every day of my career working on aligning money and values, I spend surprisingly little time thinking about that particular phrase.
Yeah, I
You
hear
would
you.
you would think. Um, I think, but perhaps I would say it is, but I also, again, it's more nuanced. It's the blood in the body situation. Like, how are we going to do anything good in the world if we don't have the tools and resources that are available to us? And money is kind of the liquid form of all those tools and resources. So,
Totally agree. Totally agree. And there's nothing I like better than a good nuanced conversation. So, all right. faith's always been an important part of your life. And tell me then when you gained a passion or how do you feel about working in the world of investing?
Mm. So there is a long career version of the story, but the short version is, I was a child of the 80s where I think one of the key phrases for the 80s is from the movie Wall Street, where Gordon Gekko says greed is good and gives this whole speech about how greed is good. And so even though I grew up without a TV and I'd never seen the movie, that was kind of in the water, this idea that business and money are about greed. And that's fundamentally what it is. Like maybe you'll do something good along the way, but fundamentally that's about greed. And so when I started my career, that wasn't what I was about. I didn't want to spend 40 hours a week plus. I didn't want to spend the majority of my waking life as an adult functionally working about something toward greed. Like I wanted to make the world a better place. So I thought that my two options were policy and nonprofit work. And initially oh gosh, I can't tell the whole long story of this version, it's too much. But fast forward a few years and I ended up doing some work against human trafficking. And I mean, that's just devastating. Just learning about these stories every day is just horrible, very depressing. But during that, I came to realize that basically anywhere in the world where you don't have, well, you have a group of people who cannot meet their own human needs through participating in a healthy, functioning economy where they can do work and get paid and it's enough, then you're going to have somebody standing by ready to exploit. Like that's the brokenness of human nature. Exploitation is going to be there wherever there's vulnerability. And it flipped a switch in my mind of how I think about the economy. Like suddenly the economy was not about greed anymore. The economy was actually about human flourishing. And wherever it wasn't about human flourishing, wherever it wasn't actually about exploitation and greed and these other things, that was the brokenness. That was not the function. So that started the journey where I ended up first at a philanthropy that was putting all of its endowment into investments that were aligned with its mission, and then ultimately in this world of mutual funds and ETFs that are values aligned, and in my particular career case, faith aligned also.
It's such a powerful thing. Like, everything you just said, it just got my wheels turning for sure. Exploitation exists where there's vulnerability. So when there's no jobs, when there's no hope, when there's no
Mhm.
real economy, then bad things are going to happen. And that's human nature. We're going to do whatever
Yeah.
we need to or we can to put food in our mouths and to protect the people that are important to us. And oftentimes that's going to come at the expense of other people. And it also made me think about how lifting third world out of poverty then makes the world a cleaner place because they start using more clean sources of fuel and everything else. So it's nothing but a good
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So money is not, in fact, the root of all evil. It's the solution to many problems.
Yeah.
Is what I just heard you say.
Yeah, it really is. We can direct it and we can guide it and keep human flourishing at the as the guide star, you know? There's a word I'm losing on that. The North Star?
Yeah, for
The
sure.
North
And
Star.
human flourishing, that's one of my favorite terms. And it's kind of an uncommon term for some reason. Perhaps you see it more than I do. Um, and I think I think it's wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. It
Yeah.
makes sense. You're able to do work that is very meaningful and certainly aligned with what's important to you. And if I am able to do that as an investor, well, then why wouldn't I want to do that with my money? I get to customize just about everything these days. I can make choices about where I bank and choices about where I spend, but I don't know if a lot of people realize that I can also do that with my investing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of the really cool things about it, that it is possible that we can choose to invest in companies that align with our values or to engage with companies and help them become better aligned with our values. I mean, one area that I think about a lot these days, like so I'm a mom. I have kids. They're 5, 3, and 1. And we live in an era where AI is exploding. And so our advancements in quantum computing is just unbelievable what's possible now that wasn't even possible 6 months ago. So the world that they're going to live in as adults is going to be wildly different. And it's so important to me that we have people at the table at these companies that are advancing these things, keeping human flourishing top of mind. Like, how do we thoughtfully advance this in such a way where we don't create an economy that's fundamentally broken, where humans are competing in impossible competitions for the food we eat and the clothes we wear and all these things. Like, how do we think about that from a technology standpoint? How do we think that from an economy standpoint? How do we all, as citizens, do our part in sort of creating that world that we want to live in and that we want our kids to live in? So it's actually, I had a fascinating conversation this morning with my colleague, Chris. So background, I work for Praxis Investment Management. This is the kind of work that we do. We create mutual funds and ETFs that are values aligned, and my work is to help market and sell those, and to some degree put them together. So this morning, I got to have a conversation with Chris Meyer, who's our head of corporate engagement, and about the engagement that he's doing. And I probably shouldn't name company names right now, but companies in the social media and telecom space around child safety online, which includes a lot of things: child sexual exploitation, cyberbullying, mental health issues, and he and coalitions of investors are having those conversations with companies about how do we track metrics, and how do we get things better, and how do you know that your investors care about this, that the bottom line isn't only about the money that comes in the door. That is important, but it's also about what kind of world are we creating down the line.
Well, I'm heartened to hear that big organizations and companies are considering these things and there's conversations around them. So,
Mhm.
how important is it to people? What percentage of the population, or is that even knowable, want to be able to
Yeah.
invest more aligned to their values?
It might be more than you think. So, as it so happens, Praxis recently commissioned and then released research into this topic. Now, Praxis being a faith-based family, we focused especially on people of, religious or spiritual backgrounds and values, or let me be clear. The survey was for everyone, a general selection of the American public. 67% of the investors who were surveyed, and also 67 or 68% of the advisors who were surveyed, identified themselves as being people of some sort of religious or spiritual faith. And that's in line with what we see from, Pew Research about the American public. So it's the significant majority of us, right? And they also asked, and these were folks who are doing the investments for their households, either solo or together with their spouse or partner. Um, and 48% of them said either that they were already aligning their values in some way with their faith, or attempting to, or that they wanted to and they just weren't aware of any investment products that would allow them to do that. So, I have my work cut out for me, because that's part of what I try to do, is make people aware of these investment products that allow you to align your values and your faith. But it was also really, that was heartening, but it was also kind of, there was a piece of the information that was kind of shocking, which is that, so an even greater percentage of investors said that, if I'm working with a financial advisor, it's really important that they understand my values and that they incorporate that. That we asked the question in several different ways, and so there's a variety of answers, but they're all in the 70 to 80% range, right? People are saying, yes, we have to have this conversation. And only 9% of financial advisors are actually broaching the topic at all. A lot of them are avoiding, 36% are saying, I avoid the topic. I don't have this conversation at all. And so that was really interesting. Like, hey, people are going to financial advisors for their expertise. And yet this area that they say is really important is like getting left off the table.
I think that is interesting. It's our norms or our mores have certainly shifted over the years. We were never supposed to talk about politics, and now that's
Yeah.
all it seems like we want to talk about. And sex, we seem fine with that. So why not talk about religion as well? And it sounds
Right.
like a lot of investors, in fact, the vast majority of investors, are interested in aligning what's important to them with their money. Yet you've got a quarter or a third of these advisors who are still holding on to the idea that they don't want to upset the apple cart and say something that's
Mhm.
inappropriate, I guess.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, one of the things that we gathered from the data was, we think that a lot of people are concerned, especially advisors are concerned, that if they try to offer faith aligned or values aligned investments, that they're not going to be able to hit the same performance numbers.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a reasonable concern. It's their job to be concerned about that.
Sure.
Um, but in our experience, there certainly are plenty of options out there. And again, that's what we try to do is try to put together these mutual funds and ETFs that really keep those practical considerations in mind, uh, as well as the values considerations. Actually, that's part of why we have a corporate engagement team. So if you're putting together a portfolio, you want to match it to a benchmark. So you're looking at that benchmark of an index, say, and it's got these 200 companies listed and these market cap weights, and that's what you're matching. And then maybe you look at it, you say, well, I'm going to take out companies like tobacco companies, alcohol companies, pornography is a common one. Like there's a sort of some standard removals really that are pretty across the values-based investment industry. The more companies that you take out, then of course the greater it's called tracking area, the greater your difference is between the fund you're creating and the fund the index that you're trying to match. And so one of the things that we do is rather than we kind of give ourselves a tracking error budget, and we certainly screen out of the companies where like, okay, I'm never gonna show up on Philip Morris's door and convince them to stop selling cigarettes. Like that's just probably not a conversation worth my time. But, having a conversation with a social media company or telecoms company about child safety online, that conversation is worth having. And child exploitation is not their main business. So that's where we think and we actually have a whole framework. We call it Impact X, but it's a whole framework of all these different things that we can do to try to make a maximum positive real world impact while having these investments. So it's doing things like voting our proxies in our bond fund. We're including these positive impact bonds. Sometimes these corporate engagements become systemic or policy level engagements. Like Chris was saying this morning. Hey, sometimes we're trying to encourage these companies to collaborate with law enforcement, but if they can't, maybe they have to comply with privacy laws, and so they can't flag that this person is exploiting children online. But if we could change that law a little bit, they'd be able to do that better. So sometimes it's like these advocacy systemic levels, and then sometimes it's these like community development investments where it's things like putting a grocery store into a food desert or building a healthcare clinic in an area where people don't have that. So these really high impact localized investments.
That's pretty extraordinary right there. And I don't think probably very few people that are just ordinary investors would consider that and to think about that. There was some years ago at this point reading about how I don't remember what mutual fund company it was, but they were taking some board stakes on some pretty big companies. I think that they were big energy companies. And that's not dissimilar to what you're talking about, just being able to be clumsy about it, to kind of throw your weight around because you do have a say in the number of shares that you own and therefore what you get to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of voice to be had by shareholders. I mean, they have investor relations teams. They have people whose job it is to listen to the investors and respond to their concerns. And that doesn't mean they're always going to do what you say, certainly not day one, but there is somebody there whose job it is to do that. So it's worth being able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how all big changes happen. Well, probably not all of them, Deirdre, but certainly a lot of them. Just very, very incremental, and that you're being intentional about it. I think that's kind of the big key here. And you're working and utilizing every avenue that you have to do the work that you believe is the most valuable or
Hmm.
valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that.
And there you go. So it feels pretty good to be saving the world, Deirdre. Good job.
Even though it's slow work, George, it is slow. We do have to be patient. When my son was born, I had this like urgent feeling in my heart that I've got 5 years to fix the world before he notices what's going on out there. And
Wow.
now he's 5, and I'm like, I have not made progress.
Like, oh shoot. Your son, let's just pretend your son's name is Joe. Be like, Joe, I'm sorry. I've been working tirelessly for 5 years, but it's still pretty rough out there. But so
Still
you need
pretty
to give
rough
me
out there.
a little bit more time. But
In
just
fairness, he still hasn't noticed. He thinks the
okay.
worst thing, his teacher told him that there was a thing called Pet Adoption Day, and now he's really disappointed that we're not adopting a dog.
Yeah, and for good reason.
Not today, anyway.
Well, that's
Oh.
one you can fix pretty easily, Deirdre.
Adopting a dog isn't easy, George.
Yeah, it is. Caring for the dog
I
once you
mean,
adopted it is
relative
very
to
hard.
fixing the world, for sure. I mean, for sure. It's way
Yeah.
easier than that.
There's
But
levels and scales to this. This is
that's true.
I think that is awesome right there. All right. Well, Deirdre, you've already given us a lot, but we're ready for that difference making tip. What do you have for us?
Okay, so I say this again as a working mom with a lot of grace for how busy people are. But I also know we're so divorced from what our money is doing, especially in our investments. Like there's, layers between like maybe it's me and maybe it's then a financial advisor or not, and then it's a fund manager and then it's a collection. It's like we're so divorced from what we're actually invested in. And I would say just take the one step of like find an asset manager that has values that resonate with you. And maybe it's Praxis. I hope it is, but maybe it's not, and that's fine. But just maybe try to in one of your accounts. Maybe it's a personal brokerage account. Maybe it's like, okay, your 529 doesn't have a lot of options, but maybe there's something in there that's value screened in some way. Just try to take that one step. And then because when you can put your money in the hands of an asset manager, then you have professionals whose job it is to enact these values that are resonating with you. Um, and then you can go on with your life, and that's happening. It's being done for you, and you can feel good about that. That would be my difference making tip. That it really does make a difference. Is it your standard State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, name your big fund family, or maybe you can find one that's like just a step or two closer to the world that you want to see, and you can put your money towards that.
Well, I think that that is great stuff. That definitely gets a come. Deirdre, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. Where can people learn more about you and how can they learn more about Praxis and the different opportunities to invest with you?
They can do all of that at praxisinvests.com. So that's investing like a verb. Praxis, Praxisinvests.com.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Deirdre your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to praxisinvests.com, praxisinvests.com, and look at all the different opportunities to put your money to work in a way that is more aligned with what is most important to you in service of human flourishing. Thanks again, Deirdre. Finally, friendly reminder, there's never going to be anybody more interested in your financial success than you are. So act accordingly.